In the heart of Germany, scientists have discovered bizarre life forms in a radioactive mine. In Saxony, deep underground, orange slime oozes from the walls, drips from the ceiling in strange strands, and has been thriving for decades in an environment that should actually be lethal.
I'm going to show you the incredible original footage of what researchers actually found down there. So let's get started right away.
Today we're talking about a very bizarre find in Germany's beautiful Elbe Sandstone Mountains, and if stories like this about crazy discoveries on our planet fascinate you as much as they do me, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button. It's completely free and you'll never miss another exciting video.
And for those who have already subscribed, giving the video a thumbs up helps it tremendously. 5,000 likes should appease the YouTube algorithm. Thanks everyone. Believe it or not, Germany was once a uranium-producing country.
But if we look at the list of the largest uranium producers in recent years, we see that Germany has been producing 0.0 metric tons of uranium per year for some time now. In the GDR, uranium was actively mined at the Königstein mine in Saxon, Switzerland and exported to the Soviet Union, but the mine has been shut down since 1990.
Now, some smart Alex among you might say, but I saw in the table that Germany continued to mine uranium for much longer. That's true because in fact, during the remediation of old mines like the one in Königstein, a certain amount of uranium is still produced.
Since the mine's closure, efforts have focused primarily on treating the mine water by extracting the uranium from the contaminated water using filtration systems. And of course, the uranium recovered from the water can also be sold, a nice side effect. However, the amount of uranium in the mine water at the Königstein mine is now so low that nothing of any significant value can be extracted from it. The last shipment of uranium sludge, weighing 19.5 metric tons, was transported to the US in 2021.
I wonder what platform you would use to sell uranium sludge. eBay? In an MDR report from 2021, we learn more.
Here, the final shipment of uranium-containing sludge from the Königstein mine is being loaded into a tanker truck, 20 metric tons, 4 of which are uranium. This is to be enriched in the Czech Republic. The uranium concentration in the mine water has continued to decline over the past decades. It is no longer worthwhile to separate out the material used to operate nuclear power plants. The uranium, which still comes up from a depth of 300 meters along with the mine water, is to be disposed of at a landfill in the future.
Natural uranium comes from the mine itself. The next step, which is now taking place at our partner's facility in the Czech Republic, is when we start talking about nuclear fuel.
That's why no one needs to worry if the contaminants from the mine are stored on the surface in the future.
At the Königstein uranium mine, at times over 1,000 tons of uranium were extracted per year.
And to extract the uranium from the rock in the first place, the miners pumped liters of sulfuric acid directly into the rock. Just picture it. You take one of the most toxic acids in existence and dump tons of it underground to extract uranium.
When mining eventually became unprofitable, they flooded the mine to contain environmental damage. And it was precisely in this flooded tunnel system, 250 meters below the surface, that something happened which no one had anticipated.
When employees descended into the tunnels again years later to inspect the mine's condition, they could hardly believe their eyes. Cone-shaped formations hung from the ceiling similar to stalactites, only not made of limestone, but of a slimy orange-brown mass. And on the floor of the drainage channels, thick thread-like slime snaked through the water like long worms. No light, a temperature of just 13 to 15 degrees, and a pH of about 2.7 to 2.9. That's about as acidic as grapefruit juice, only with a hefty dose of uranium, iron, and sulfate on top. To us, that sounds like the last place on Earth where anything could survive. A research team led by scientist Elbe Sandstone from the Helmholtz Center, Dresden-Rossendorf, took a closer look at these slimy structures, and what they found surprised even experienced microbiologists. Initially, It was thought that only simple bacteria could survive in such a hostile environment. But the reality turned out to be different. In their study, the researchers write that eukaryotes inhabit these extreme habitats to a much greater extent than previously assumed, and that they may play a significant role in the carbon cycle of such mining environments.
Wait a minute, eukaryotes. Some of you are probably having vague memories from biology class right now. For everyone who needs a moment to remember because they were always out fetching chalk,
eukaryotes are organisms whose cells possess a true enclosed nucleus, just like our own body cells. This group includes animals, plants, and fungi, as well as many single-celled organisms such as amoebas and flagellates. They therefore have a more complex cellular structure than bacteria, in which the genetic material is dispersed freely within the cell, so basically they're quite a bit more complex than what one would normally expect to find in a radioactive acid soup. What the researchers discover under the microscope really reads almost like the script for a science fiction movie. Tiny flagellates swimming through the water, amoebas shuffling formlessly through the slime, fungal filaments winding their way through the stalactites, and even rotifers, the largest organisms in this entire ecosystem, measuring up to 200 micrometers in length. By the standards of this microscopic world, that's a veritable giant. Together, all these organisms form a functioning food chain. At the very bottom are certain bacteria that derive their energy not from sunlight, as plants do, but from the chemical reaction between iron and sulfur. They are called chemolithotrophic bacteria and essentially form the foundation of the entire ecosystem. The small flagellates and amoeba feed on them, and in turn are eaten by larger rotifers and ciliates, a bona fide little ecosystem right in the middle of the darkest, most contaminated hole imaginable. In the study, the researchers also describe how both types of biofilm, the stalactite-like structures on the ceiling as well as the stringy slime streams on the floor, consist of a mixture of bacteria and eukaryotes and form a surprisingly distinct microbial community. The researchers also found it particularly exciting that several of the discovered species had never before been detected in such an extremely uranium-rich environment. In addition to flagellates, amoebae, and rotifers, the researchers also found a few truly exotic organisms. Tiny mites, which are otherwise more commonly found in compost or on rotting wood, were here cheerfully crawling through the acidic slime. In total, the scientists identified over a dozen different genetic groups, ranging from fungi to ciliates to previously unknown, as yet unnamed, single-celled organisms that could not be classified as any known species. You could almost call it a small zoo. What particularly captivates me about this story is life's incredible adaptability. We're talking about a place with absolutely no sunlight, highly acidic water, and a high concentration of uranium. And yet, over the decades, a small but complete ecosystem has established itself there.
nature really does find a way everywhere, no matter how inhospitable we humans consider a place to be. At the end of their investigation, the researchers also concluded that in the future, such ecosystems absolutely need to be taken into account when assessing how radioactive substances spread in such environments, because it's not just chemistry, but also active life that influences the movement of these heavy metals. This fact was certainly not even considered during the original sealing of the Königstein mine. By the way, the comparison with other extreme locations is also interesting. Researchers have found similar communities of life, for example, in the Spanish Rio Tinto.
A river that, due to natural ore deposits, is also extremely acidic and rich in metals, but unlike in Königstein, it flows on the surface and thus receives sunlight. And of course, it is precisely this difference that explains why biodiversity along the Rio Tinto is even greater than underground in Saxony. Without sunlight, the classic photosynthetic organisms, such as algae, are completely absent, and the entire ecosystem must instead rely entirely on chemical energy derived from iron and sulfur. Nevertheless, or perhaps precisely because of this, it is all the more remarkable how stable and diverse life has become, even under these limited conditions deep underground. And that's a pretty important insight, because if we take this line of thinking one step further, it could also be exciting for the search for extraterrestrial life, couldn't it? After all, on other planets, moons or dwarf planets, there could be habitats beneath the surface that are highly acidic, rich in metals, and exposed to elevated levels of radiation. Such conditions would be entirely conceivable, especially on exoplanets with intense volcanic activity or a thin atmosphere. The organisms from Königstein show that complex communities do not necessarily require sunlight, but can survive entirely on chemical reactions within the rock. Even radioactivity would not automatically automatically spell the end of life as long as the organisms adapt to it through repair mechanisms, protective biofilms, or particularly resilient cell structures. For astrobiology, this means that in the search for life, we shouldn't just look for Earth-like paradises with water, oxygen, and pleasant temperatures. Perhaps extraterrestrial life is hiding precisely where we've least expected it so far.
Deep beneath the surface of a seemingly completely inhospitable planet. I had the AI visualize such a life form. Let me know what we should call this alien. I'm really curious to hear your suggestions. In any case, I would really not want to encounter it. So, Königstein impressively shows us, apparently, life needs much less than we thought to conquer our habitat.
No sunlight, deadly acid, radioactive radiation, none of it a problem, as long as there's energy available to tap into somewhere, and who knows what bizarre ecosystems we'll discover when we start examining even the darkest corners of our planet more closely.
I will keep you updated on such discoveries. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel now, and don't forget to give a thumbs up so we can hit 5,000 likes. And while we're on the topic of bizarre finds,
now we're heading to Antarctica because researchers there have discovered something that should actually be impossible: human bones dated to over 200 years ago, from a time when Antarctica hadn't even been discovered yet. How this could be, and who was in Antarctica before it was discovered, you'll find out all about it in the video shown in the top right corner. Be sure to check it out. As always, you'll find another topic related to science and space in the bottom right corner. Otherwise, I'd say let's meet again in the next video. Take care, everyone.